I still think AI is an opportunity of a lifetime, but I think it has a place, and still the human has a place. I see human being powered by technology and powered by the AI to be able to really deliver for the customers the way we have not done it before. So I still need to service the customer the way they want to be serviced. I still need to provide information to my customer advocate in such a way to make that experience better than anybody else. And we need people that they can be there with our customers for the times that matters the most.
That's Bill Pappas, EVP and Head of Global Technology and Operations at MetLife, live from the main stage at ITI 2025, and this is the future of insurance.
Good. It's great to be here with you again today, Bill. This is, as I said, it's becoming tradition.
Yes.
We sat on this stage last year for a talk, and we figured we have to at least talk about something different, but it is always amazing to get time with you, so thanks for joining.
Likewise, I'm so happy to be here.
Before we jump in, for those who don't know about your world at MetLife and you a bit, can you share with us? And then I've got a number of questions.
Yeah, of course. Very excited to lead what we call a combined technology and operations organization. So think about anything that has to do from a traditional technology, from developing new technology through the CIO, the infrastructure, our cyber teams, and also data all comes together. But at the same time, the team is responsible for the client experience and everything after the underwriting, the service, the operations, and a bunch of processes that are going across the company, from procurement to crisis management to enterprise change. So our team is just like half of MetLife, both from a headcount but also from a dollars perspective.
Yeah.
And what we are so proud is we touch the customer every single day, from anything after the sales to the whole experience. The team brings those capabilities to life.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like it's sort of the experience of being a customer or an insured of MetLife or client is through the hands of your team.
Exactly.
Yeah. Look, we talked last year. One of the things that really stood out to me, I think to everyone, was the speed and scale of change that we were facing. So on the theme of change, what has changed for you over the past year
since then?
Yeah,
I think there's two things. From a macro perspective, I think what it remains very similar, that conversion of change at speed that you just talked about, and what conversion of change really means. So a lot of our leaders and everybody in this room, they've been called to manage anything that has to do from geopolitical pressure to financial volatility to proliferation of AI to cybersecurity at a way that we have never seen before, to customer preference changing, and also the workforce. And before, when I was growing up in this industry, you do one versus the other. Right now, you have no choice but to do all of it at the same time and at a pace that has not changed. So that has very stayed consistent from the last year. When you take it a level down and you look at it, especially from a technology perspective and what the CIOs are facing, I think there is three things that are very new. One is, I call this a year of options and choices. We never had so many options before. As a technologist, I grew up, there is one platform, there's a second platform, you make a choice. Now I have so many options out there, and the choices that I need to make is changing so rapidly. You're becoming obsolete in the next 6 months. So how do you operate on that? The second thing I think it's very relevant right now is we're also creating new playbooks. I always talked about it. AI did not come with a playbook. Responsible AI did not come with a playbook. Cyber playbook, it's not relevant what it used to be. So you need to create those new playbooks of execution, but also they're converging together. Our customers are telling me, I want you to provide me digital capabilities to service the transactional nature of the interaction, but I want you to do it securely. So what it used to be very separate execution playbooks now comes together. And the last thing is, how do you execute at speed, at scale, and how do you do that with discipline to ensure your control environment still stay put given the scale of what you're trying to do? So this is what we see this year has been very different. Well, you still have this big change and conversion at a pace that you have never seen before.
I appreciate it's a more positive framing to, I think everyone feels a bit under attack. At the moment. There's a lot of, all the macro pressures that are out there, the internal pressures we already had going on within our companies. So when you frame it as options and choices, I think a lot of people
Yeah.
feel like they don't have agency in this moment because of everything that's
Yes.
being thrown at them. That's a really nice
Way
mental
of
shift.
putting it. Yeah.
So maybe everyone can remember that. It's like, wait, you still have choices. At the same time, one of the complications with that is it's too much. I don't, you said there's more than one platform to choose from. There's more than one path to go ahead. It's not even just this vendor or this vendor, or, we build it this way or that way. It's almost innumerable.
Correct.
How do you figure out which opportunities should we go down the path on? And maybe as a follow-up question, is there a way to have the right checks and balances along the path to say, hang on, we might need to reprioritize or shift what we're doing?
No, absolutely. So, and again, and we've never been trained for this. So the other thing that people feel tremendous amount of pressure because that's not the way we grew up. So changing at pace on how you lead is very important. But for me, if I look at why I call it options and choices, and those are two very different things. Options goes back to what you said. We have so many emerging technologies that is coming up. Just being able to understand what's out there is huge. So we've been telling our folks to make sure that you have to be commercial and understand what's out there. And not only understand it just from the name, but understand what is that capability, the new capability, and the maturity of those new capability. The second thing that is very important is how that capability really works in your ecosystem.
Yeah.
So there's a tremendous amount of discussion out there. Everything is cool until you need to plug it into your ecosystem. And a lot of us, we're growing up with companies that have been alive for a very, very long time. So how do you make sure that effectiveness is really coming through your ecosystem? But the most important thing about those options is why are you even doing that? What is the path to value of that solution?
Yeah.
Do you have a business case that everybody understands? What is the outcome from the customer? What is the outcome from the associate? Or what is the bottom line implication for that?
Yeah.
So you have a lot of tools that they may behave very differently in your ecosystem, and there is confusion in terms of what is the value at the end of this. And then you have a choice. And how do you make a choice when 6 months down the road, what you have choose may be obsolete?
Yes.
So what we've been really pushing our teams is making sure that you understand the product roadmap a lot deeper and understanding the business that you are going to really kind of to partner going forward to make sure can they keep up with what you see. Because in some cases, it's very hard for us to implement something in 6 months down the road, take it away and put something it's not practical.
Yeah.
And then is how do you contractually create flexibility? So we never before had to sit down and said, okay, if things are changing that much, how do we ensure that we have a way out if we need it, or we have enough of flexible architecture to plug in something different in a different location if we need to?
Does being on the cloud and using SaaS solutions give you more flexibility, or are the contracts there sort of built in a way that offsets the fact that you could just swap out? And
all of the above.
Yeah.
And for us, even from a cloud perspective, we're very measured. Sometimes it's not cloud for the sake of putting cloud, but when you do, it gives you that velocity that you need, as long as you understand that velocity is profitable at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So for us, we are balancing both of these, both the SaaS and the cloud, and make sure that you understand that at the end of the day, they will power capabilities that you have that path to value.
Yeah.
And I think that's very hard. People doing a lot of things for the tools, but not understanding, do I get the value at the end of this?
Yeah.
And especially in a time frame to cover the expenses as you're building a very different ecosystem.
I want to press on something that you mentioned. I'm very cheap, so the business case side of it speaks to my heart. But a lot of times, I think on the business side, we sense a need to have something because it feels like table stakes, or we feel like we're not keeping up with the competition.
Yeah.
But we also find it very hard to show the cost benefit. There isn't an explicit sales go up by this much or losses go down by this much, and so we can tell the story. I loved your point about thinking through the product roadmap.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, listen, this in and of itself may not have a dollar benefit attached to it, but we cannot unlock this step down the road if we don't do that. I get that story, but is there a sense of, it has nothing to do with the product roadmap, but it has to do with sort of the competitive or the customer expectation roadmap? Is that I'm throwing a random question at you, but
no, it's not
random.
I mean, at the end of the day, it just goes back to what is the path to value.
Yeah.
And the path to value may be from a customer point of view. The path to value may be from an associate point of view. How do you simplify what it takes to be able to service or develop those new products in the market? And all of this needs to lead. What is the bottom line from all of this? So for me, all of those lenses needs to come in. And we also talk about this, what I call FOMO, of missing out. There is a tremendous amount of pressure to ensure that we are not missing out from a tools perspective. So what I call is, how do you avoid the AI shiny object syndrome? And I think it's real. I mean, if I go across the room and I ask, what was the last time that you guys had an email from either your CEO, your board, or your peers asking you about a tool and how cool and how promising that tool is?
Yeah.
So to your point, it's just stuck only with a tool point of view. It's very narrow.
Yes.
And quite frankly, avoids the question, why? What is it that you're trying to do?
Yeah.
What's the value proposition? What is the path to value using those tools? And a lot of the companies, they're stuck into the tool, proving the tool versus proving an outcome. And it's very difficult for people to be able to just figure out that equation.
Yeah. I'm sure the majority of people in the audience have been in that position where they know there's an answer that they need to pursue, and there's a barrier internally to the approval. So think about the outcome of the tool. Maybe that's where the conversation is stuck, in a very sort of tactical, the tool and its cost versus, well, why in the first place? So there's your guidance on how to get approval. I want to talk a little bit about transformation, technology transformation, digital transformation. We don't hear much of that anymore because all we talk about is AI. I love that you mentioned cyber. That was all we heard about a few years ago. So there's always some hashtag that gets the attention. When we think about transformation and AI in particular, where do you see companies going wrong right now? Because there are a lot of people doing a lot of things, and yet we're a bit just like spinning. We're in too low of a gear, and so we're spinning our wheels, our feet faster than our wheels are moving.
I agree. I'll start with what I just finished with. I think the first thing that we need to get better at is the whole idea, what is it that you're trying to resolve?
Yeah.
So for us, I mean, this is a MetLife experience. We started with the tools because everybody's enamored and everybody heard that if I do this tool, this is what's gonna do. But we couldn't get enough traction. So we take a step back and said, okay, how do I look at this? One pool of value is really thinking about your core processes. So you start looking at all the core processes that service our customers, being able to clearly articulate and understand where we are today versus where we need to be, and then layering in the tools and say, what tools do I have available today that can get me there faster, more agile, and give me more opportunities and more functionality that I've never had before. And that resonated a lot. If I go and ask the underwriting, what does the underwriting process looks like? What is the actuarial process looks like? So you're tying it back to what people know and do every single day. And then the tools becoming important, but they're becoming a way to be able to fix your process.
Yeah.
So that is the first thing, avoiding that AI kind of shiny object kind of fear that people have, and the FOMO. I'm missing something because I'm not doing that. That's number one. I think number two is we're underestimating how important it is to simplify it and modernize our own technology infrastructure. The reality is to be able, assuming you have a path to value and you chose a tool, that tool needs to be plugged into your ecosystem. So there is two things that I read that was very interesting. Across the big companies in the US, that was Wall Street. I think the author was Christopher Sims. It says that we have 1.5 trillion of legacy debt today. So you can take the tool and you can have a value proposition, but as you plug your tool into that technical debt, you're never going to be able to get the value out of that tool. And the second thing that we're not doing well is data. Data, because it's so fragmented into that technology debt, it is kind of convoluted. So how do you make sure your data fits for purpose, your data is accessible, and you democratize how data being able to be consumed? So you have to spend significant amount of time, not only understand the tools, but the simplification of your environment. And goes back to cyber, the more simplified that is, the more you're able to protect your environment as well. And the last thing, I think we're not spending a lot of time, there is a lot of intensity around the skill sets.
Yeah.
So as we talk to our associates, is what is the new skill sets that you need to be able to stay competitive? We're not talking to our leaders in terms of what is the leadership attributes to manage what we have today.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of time at MetLife. For us, there's 3 big areas that we're focusing on from that. Critical thinking. Go back to choices and conversion of change. Do we have people that have enough critical thinking to be able to make those decisions? Second one, I call it human plus collaboration. I'm intrigued that as we're sitting here, not only today in the workforce, there is 5 generations, but we're probably going to be the last generation of the workforce that is going to be human only. So how do you integrate the new technology, and how do you teach leaders to be able to really kind of manage the human plus equation? And then how do you create a culture that people are comfortable enough to learn, relearn, and the most difficult thing, unlearn what it was actually cool 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So for me, if I go back, I said, this is the thing, is moving away from the tools. Don't underestimate your infrastructure. You need to invest as much, and leaders need to be ready, not only technically, but they need leadership attributes to be able to manage the complexity that we see.
Yeah. I want to challenge something that you said. While I agree with you on shiny objects and shiny object syndrome, it's very dangerous. It feels like where we are with AI today, we haven't necessarily, I don't think we've really clearly spelled out, this is what AI can do and this is how we do it yet. There are some cases where, look, there's a great solution that can do a thing for us, and it's wonderful, but so much of it is in the sort of exploration phase. It's a capability that hasn't necessarily clarified its purpose yet, or how we as a specific organization would benefit or implement that. Or do we run the danger of saying, well, shiny object syndrome, we can't just play with these things, and so we'll never figure out how we could do with it? Or is that a specific case where it's like, look, we need to have POCs, pilots, test cases, people trying to figure out what the non-shiny object implementation might be?
All of the above. The way we talked about it, we talked about composite AI. So the other thing for me, just like you need, your tool set needs to be broad enough. So for me, when I look at what is it that we need to do, in some cases, being able to have rule-based solution, it's gonna get me there at a cost that makes sense for me and at a scales that make sense. Very versus angelic AI or generative AI. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to make sure I literally look at what is the percentage of the tools that we're using for the solutions that we have agreed to go through this. And you absolutely need to have all of the above. You need to experiment. You need to be able to figure out and try. And we are doing, but also for me, it's not, if somebody comes back and say, my technology portfolio, it's 100% agentic AI solutions, I don't buy it. Because they haven't yet been proven. They haven't been proven at scale. And they haven't been proven that you can do it responsible yet. Do I have cases that we're doing in our sandbox and pilot? Yes. But you need the balance. And I think even the discussion, people rule out AI that has been proven and is still very helpful today. And it's at scale and at risk that is very different. So for me, the way we think through this is you need the balance, you need to experiment, you need to understand it, you need to go back to the ones that really can be able to get you there. And it's the balance of all of this. I don't like the extremes. You can't just ignore them. You cannot, the noise and the headlines, and quite frankly, the opportunity is too big to ignore them. How do you operationalizing it? How do you plug them into your ecosystem? So that work you cannot leave behind, but you need to balance, because at the end of the day, you still need to operate with the ecosystem that you have, with the customer base that you have, within the control environments that everybody had agreed it's safe, and within the cost that keeps you competitive in the marketplace. It's not the either or. That's why this is more complex than we have ever done before.
Yeah. There's a really interesting case study that is right now with Klarna. Last year, everything's AI. We're laying off all of our customer interaction kind of staff, support service, et cetera. And they, I think just this week or last week, pulled back.
They had to, to bring them back.
Everything you just framed was exactly that. The claim that 100%, and the claim that we're there already. And they learned the hard way that actually, no, not quite. It can help, but it's not there yet.
And again, the tool in isolation, it can be proved right.
Yes.
The tool within your ecosystem, it's a different story.
Yeah.
And then how do you do that responsibly? And do you understand what it takes to do that responsibly? So you need to kind of thread the needle like all the way end to end. You can't just look at it in isolation.
Yeah. I had an interesting discussion yesterday about this. We're not there yet where the AI can do everything. We still need people. And there's so many cases where we're saying it's AI getting it ready for the person or letting the person be, these are like the plus, right? So they're the human plus. They've got all the knowledge and it's synthesized and they can get to the point of really adding value instead of getting caught in the weeds or the minutia in the process. Because the bar continues to move, or the ball continues to move forward in terms of the complexity and the situations that our customers are dealing with, our products change. Does that mean that you never get to a place where the AI can just take over? Or is it really just that, look, the AI is not ready yet, but give it 6 months, 18 months, whatever it is, and we can start to actually do what Klarna was saying? Like, do you think the complexity change means there will always be a place for a human in that story, and the AI is picking up for that which we've already figured out?
Yeah. For me, I just still think AI is an opportunity of a lifetime.
Yeah.
But I think it has a place, and the human has a place into that. That's why when we talked about critical thinking, AI is not going to give me critical thinking. AI so far, at least not in my lifetime, it won't be able to figure out how do I manage the conversion of change at a pace that I have never done before. So for me, just like as it gets better and better, and it's pretty exciting when you look at the technology, where does it make sense to be able to embed it? And how does that change the way you collaborate with a human? But for us, I don't see, in my view, an environment that human is not going to be able to be part of that.
Yeah.
I see human being powered by technology and powered by the AI to be able to really kind of deliver for the customers the way we have not done it before. I've seen human just kind of letting go some of the transactional nature of the interactions that we have with the customers, but empower them with knowledge. I was in a call center and somebody said, this is only one channel. And I was looking at how my advocates servicing the customer with those new tools. It is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Simple from the summarization to be able to authenticate them right away, to be able to give you prompts on how do you ask, to be able to tell you to lower your voice and take a breath because your customer has a level of anxiety on the other end that you may not realize. So the human is the human, but what is available to that human now in a way that we have never been able to do before. And I can see how easy, because the goal has not changed. The goal is I still need to service the customer the way they want to be serviced. I still need to provide those information to my advocates, my customer advocates, in such a way to make that experience better than anybody else.
Yeah.
So that's what I see. And I see this is going to get better and better and better. And we need people that they can be there with our customers for the times that matters the most, not to take what is my claim status.
Yeah.
I can give you that in a way that is still very valuable and customer friendly, but that's not where I add value. I add value when you call me and I have to listen to your situation and I had to adjust. It's now rule-based. I have to understand what's happening on the other end and create that solution that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
With all the power that comes into that from a data perspective and AI perspective.
I see a sort of AI as analytical thinking, whereas humans are critical thinking.
Right.
And you need both.
And you need both, and that's the human plus.
Yeah. So you said customer a couple times. We're talking about AI, we're talking about macro pressures, we're talking about internal complications, the customer is still there. How do you get the customer need to cut through and consider that? And what are the challenges that you see today from a customer satisfaction standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I start with, and I think this is very similar to a lot of you, that unbiased listening. Make sure that you have a ways to be able to listen to your customers, not only to understand the performance of what they're using today as product, but most importantly, understand the trends. Because when you look at like customer behavior, the trends are changing really, really fast and significant.
Yeah.
Second one is you need to have a measurement system. So how do you, now that you listen to this, how do you measure? So for us, we're spending a lot of time looking at both what we call TNPS and RNPS. So TNPS is the transactional feedback for the customer. You call me, you ask me for the status of your claim, how did I do with that?
Yeah.
But we also talk about the RNPS, which is how is the relationship with you and MetLife, and are you willing to endorse MetLife to somebody else? So you listen to understand the trends, you measure to understand how do you compare and contrast against those trends and anybody else. And then the other thing that we have done is we start embedding customers as we're designing products. And this is even more important right now because of AI.
Yeah.
So going back to my simple call center example, you're putting a lot of those AI tools, and then you need to keep fine-tuning them. So you need your customers to be able to provide that ongoing feedback, to be able to ensure that you fine-tune those models in such a way that they're becoming more in tune with how they're going to be able to provide the information back to this. So you have to listen because things is changing, and you need to take that into account. You have to measure, and quite frankly, you need to embed them into you as you're developing your new product and solutions. And the other thing I tell you, that the most challenging piece of this for us is customers really want the best experience that they had last. And guess what? That best experience that was last, it may not be your company, it may not be your industry.
Yeah, probably
So
wasn't.
I tell our teams is I'm competing against Amazon every single day on how do I provide that service. So this whole idea that we are an insurance company,
Yeah.
or we are a banking company, or you're a financial service company, when it comes to our customers, and I think pandemic even accelerated that, but it truly, you're competing in a playing field that is very, very different from the way we have done it before. So how do you making sure that you invest enough to be able to do that, and being able to stay ahead? Because nobody called me lately and said it's okay if you lose my data because you're an insurance company.
Yeah, I think that some people struggle with well, we're nothing like Amazon. One click is irrelevant. Fine. The point, I think, is the level of what is acceptable as a customer experience has moved dramatically. And I challenge people and said, would you have accepted that if you were the customer? And I think rationally the answer
and
is
the customers will tell you no.
Yeah, right.
So that's the other thing. So for us, it's just this is becoming significant investment. And when you look at those tools, that both the emerging tools and AI, how does it make that experience differently from what it did before? And how it's relevant to your product, but the expectations are the expectations.
Yeah. We only have 2 minutes left, and this is a big question, so it's a challenge. But last year, you left with some parting advice for executives that was really powerful. I want to ask you the same question in the context of what we're talking about is, what advice do you have for business leaders out there when it comes to really setting them up to be empowerers of profitable business growth in this very complex situation that they face?
Yeah, I will say 3 things, and I keep having those discussions with my team. Number one, it's you need to have what I call commercial mindset. As you're sitting here on the technology side of the house, you need to know how we make money, but equally important, you need to know how what we do today compare and contrast with everything else that you see out there. And that ongoing, what I call productive paranoia, to make sure that just because you've done well does not mean you're going to be able to continue well. Challenging yourself to have that commercial mindset of everything that you do. The second thing, especially with so much that people are trying to manage, prioritize for impact versus activity. We are very good to prioritize. We're not very good at killing everything else. So you need to create enough capacity to manage the complexity that we're seeing today. So prioritization for impact is huge. And the last thing is I will go back and still think that how do you able to execute nothing beats execution, but how do you do it at scale? Those tools need to be productive at scale to see an impact to your customer, to your bottom line, but also how you're doing it with discipline.
Yes.
The control environment and making sure that you stay intact. We're very regulated state and across. So how do you do all that at a speed and scale, but how do you stay within the risk appetite that we have agreed to? So that will be my advice.
Yeah. Well, I think the advice is a set of questions and points to focus on. There is no single answer for everyone. But I love the challenge to people to look, this is what you need to be pondering. Bill, it's always great to sit down with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much. It was great to see you, and thank you for the questions.
Thanks, everybody.